So I know there are going to be a lot of questions about my new mesh piece because it's awesome. And it was one of those things that mesh embroidery is becoming a bigger trend. And so I wanted to give you some hints and tips and tricks and kind of talk to you about the basics of mesh embroidery. So this is the mesh that I used for the project going in the gallery. There are a variety of different types of mesh. This is a very soft, fine mesh. You can see the holes are very tiny. It is a bit stretchy. It's not extremely stretchy, but it has some spring. That's important. This is a higher quality mesh than the inexpensive mesh that you would get for like the girls' tutus that you just chop up and loop around. This is a lot more expensive than that. This is significantly more expensive for that, and there's a reason for that. The biggest reason is this is sturdier. So this is meant for ball gowns, undergarments, so it is much smoother and finer. It is still made of the same nylon acrylic material, but in the same way that there are a variety of different yarns made in acrylic material, and one is on the lower quality spectrum, is very rough, not very easy to work with, versus something on the higher quality acrylic spectrum. Even when we talk about yarn, it's smoother, it's more delicate, it's finer, and that's the same kind of grading system for mesh. So when you go to Joann's or your favorite fabric store with your mask on, please touch, because that is going to be the biggest way that you're going to tell, besides the price tag. You can check the price tags. The higher quality meshes are going to be thinner. This is thinner than a lower quality mesh, and it is softer. So pet the fabrics gently pet the fabric, and then sanitize your hands. Sanitize before and after petting the fabrics. So that's the first thing to talk about, is the quality of the mesh. How are you going to work with your mesh? If you're doing a small piece, you can use a cross stitch / embroidery hoop, but you need to cover it. You also probably need to sand it. So the inner hoop, most people usually cover the outside of the inner hoop. So the inside part, you want to cover the outside of the hoop though, because if you snag this mesh, it will tear. Any mesh will tear, whether you're talking about inexpensive mesh or very expensive mesh, it will tear. Okay, and that's why people cover the outside. Don't wrap it around. Cover the outside, and most people use just like a felt that you kind of soften up a bit. And you rub on it and soften it up, and then hot glue that around the outside of your inner loop. Some people also do the inside of the outside loop. So you would have your mesh and then your 2 layers of felt or soft fabric, so that it's holding it, but it's not going to pull it, it's not going to rip it, it's not going to tear it. Some people, if you buy a higher quality embroidery hoop, you can simply sand it until it's smooth, but you really have to watch out for those outside corners of the hoop that could snag it. So it definitely takes a few more steps to even get to the point where you're going to embroider it. I use beading size needles. This is tiny, y'all. This is super tiny when we talk about needle sizes. So I use a very thin, straight beading needle, because I also usually bead when I do embroidery work. You also need to be aware of the type of thread that you're using. You can use cotton thread. It is more difficult. It has less stretch than a silk or specialty embroidery thread, which is mostly used with mesh fabric. So not only are we talking about adjusting or purchasing a special hoop or a scroll. I got my scroll, and I don't, where is it? Well, there it is. I don't use that without coverings on both of the wooden dowel rolls. I literally had them both covered in the paper and clamped with the potato chip clips that had rubber eyes in the middle. So if you're doing a bigger piece, you're going to have to get something new probably to hold your material. Then you're talking about new needles, you're talking about thread. Most people use silk or rayon. You have to be very careful because again, that thread has to slide gently through this. And the most important thing that I tell people, if you have not mastered tension when we talk about crochet, when we talk about regular embroidery, when we talk about cross stitch, we talk about anything across the board when you're talking about fiber techniques, tension is the most important thing when it comes to mesh because you can see everything first off. So unless you're layering like you would paint, you know, get your bottom layer and then layer on top of it because you don't want any mess ups or ugly backs to be seen. So you need to layer your thread so that it's not seen, or you can use the back stitch to your advantage. Like I did, my piece was inspired by a line drawing that I did. And I was like, I don't want to just use one line though. So I used a few. So I had to have beginnings and ends. And of course you have to treat those in a special way, of course, too. So I actually have to readjust the nose thread because with the little knot on the end, it looks like she has a little boogie. So I gotta go back and readjust that. You can't use fire on the back of your, people are like, oh, just burn it. It's fine. You can't. It will melt the mesh. Melt the mesh. So you have to learn a variety of new techniques, which is exciting when it comes to mesh embroidery. But I always tell people you're gonna mess up a lot, and that's okay. Take the lessons from your mistakes and continue to upgrade your skills. So if you're interested in starting mesh embroidery, I would say buy a medium quality mesh on sale, okay? And I'm gonna say that because you're gonna you mess it up. So buy half a yard, buy a yard, okay? If you're on a budget, get a decent size, inexpensive embroidery hoop. And again, like I said, line, you're gonna sand it because the inexpensive ones have little prickly teeth, especially when we talk about the edges. Sand it gently, sand it. And then line at least the inside, the inside I'm whistling. The inside hoop. Line the outside with some felt or fleece or something soft, and be sure to give that inside one another good sanding. It's got to be soft because if there's anything that will catch, it will catch your fabric, and you're gonna cry. Because I've done it. It's okay. It happens. It happens. Again, you're going to need a really thin needle. I highly recommend just a very long, thin beading needle. Really easy to get. They're not very expensive. If you don't have good eyes, you're gonna want to get a needle threader as well, because those nice tiny little sharp needles have very tiny holes for the thread to go through. Talk about thread. You're going to need to get a smoother thread. You can get silk, but as a beginner, I would not recommend getting silk. You can use the rayon / shiny soft version of your DMC cotton thread. It is not easy to work with, like at all. That's okay. That's okay. Be strong. Be strong. Start with a small piece and then get bigger. And just keep at it. Add some beads in, add some sequins, make it fun. Design your own thing, but definitely work on your tension. That is the one skill that if anyone was like, what would you recommend? Work your tension. Work on your tension. Work on your tension. Work on your tension. Because when you don't have to worry about your mesh ripping and you have it nice and nicely put into your frame, then you have to work on keeping the tension the same on your thread so you're not pulling and twisting your material within your hoop, because that will happen. It simply will. The weight of the beads actually shifted the mesh in one portion of my piece, and I had to readjust for that when we hung it and put it in the frame. But I knew that was going to happen because I wanted to put beads on it. Beads are heavier than the side with no beads. So you gotta kind of think about that, and you'll see in your own pieces how it works. But yeah, mesh embroidery, not recommended. Not recommended to beginners. That is definitely an intermediate to advanced skill. If you're interested in embroidery, I highly recommend practicing on a regular fabric first. If you're interested in working on mesh, I would say start on something like linen or muslin, because it is a similar kind of temperamental fabric. There we go. Yeah, temperamental fabric. I love it. So start with that and go from there. If you have any questions, leave them below and I'll get to them when I can. Thanks so much. I hope that you'll come see my piece in the gallery and help us celebrate the reopening officially of the new show towards the end of the month. Thanks so much.